Episode 1 of Squid Game begins with an introduction to just what Squid Game actually is. This happens to be an old childhood game, with kids divided into two teams, that of defense and attack. In order to win, the attackers must touch a small closed-off spot. However, if the defenders push you outside the closed-off game area, you die. Metaphorically, of course. This forms the basis of what we'll be working with here, as we jump forward in time. Gai-hun is a down on his luck guy with a serious gambling problem. His mother is broke, and Gai-hun scrounges what funds he can, and ends up betting on the horses. It's risky but seems to work given he wins 4.5 million won. Unfortunately Gai-hun owes a hell of lot more to loan sharks, 160 million won to be precise, and in the ensuing chase, loses all the cash she's just gained to a pickpocket. As a result, he's forced to sign a contract to these loan sharks, confirming he'll pay up, or lose a kidney. He even signs it with a bloody fingerprint too. Given it's his daughter Georgia Young's birthday, Gai-hun tries to win her something from a claw machine. And the prize he wins her. A lighter in the shape of a gun. Tensions are high between Gai-hun and Georgia Young's mum, as she berates Gai-hun bringing the girl back late, despite only being 10 minutes past their allotted time. In the morning, Gai-hun is approached by a wealthy salesman carrying a briefcase. He wants to play a game. For every round of dakji Gai-hun wins, he'll gain 100,000 won. If he loses, he'll have to give up that same amount of money. And the game does not go to plan. In fact, every time Gai-hun loses, he receives a swift slap to the face for his troubles, a worthy substitute for plunging further into debt. This is all a test though, encouraging Gai-hun to move on to bigger and better games. Gai-hun's life is a mess, and on top of money owed to loan sharks, he also owes 250 million to the banks. Handing over a business card, the strange man walks away, after telling Gai-hun there's only a few places left. Gai-hun is riding a high over his win, but things take a depressing turn when he heads home. It turns out Georgia Young is going to the US with her family. However, if Gai-hun can show that he's financially dependable, he may be able to stop that. And that is incentive enough for Gai-hun to enter the games. After being knocked out with sleeping gas, Gai-hun awakens to find himself in a strange room, monitored by numerous people wearing red hooded jackets. There are 456 contestants in total, and all of them are inside this strange room. A fight soon breaks out between contestants 101 and 67, with the former accusing the girl of being a North Korean spy. Gai-hun jumps in, though, and manages to stop things escalating, but not for long. The doors open, revealing these strange hooded figures in numbers. They explain that the group will be there for 6 days, competing across 6 different games. There's a lot of money on the line, and it seems that every single person in this room is in massive debt, just like Gai-hun. The actual amount of money is still being kept under wraps, but it does feel like it's going to be a lot. Each player signs a consent form, and has their picture taken, ready to ascend up the colorful staircases to where the game room is. This happens to be a large open area, where the players are forced to stand behind a white line. A strange man in a black mask oversees everything, known simply as the front man, who watches all of this transpire across numerous monitors. The first game is red light, green light. With a giant robotic girl standing on the other side of the large field and snipers at the ready, gunshots echo across the playing field for anyone who can't keep up. Basically, the contestants need to get from point A to point B during green light. When it's red light though, if anyone moves then they're eliminated. Means, shot dead, as numerous gunshots echo across the playing field. Contestants are eliminated as they try to run away. With time running out, Gai-hun is saved by another contestant whom we later learn is called Ali. He, Sang-woo and Gai-hun all make it over the line with less than a second left. Those left on the field once that timer ends, though, are shot dead. With the game over, the roof suddenly covers the entire field as the camera pans out. These guys are on an island, and it seems there's no escape. Episode 2 of Squid Game begins right off the back of the first game. During the lull between games, Gai-hun thanks Sang-woo and the other contestant who helped him during the game. This is short-lived, though, as the staff arrive in the big dormitory. Only 201 people have survived the first round. Sang-woo decides to organize a coup, though, and tries to get the players to vote in a majority to stop the games completely and head home. Before they vote, the prize money is counted up. With 100 million won per contestant, there's 25.5 billion won up for grabs already. If they all quit, this money will be divided up to the deceased, but the living will go home with nothing. The vote comes down to the wire, with player 001 casting the deciding vote. Well, he chooses not to keep playing, ending the process completely. Half the room is ecstatic, the other not so much. Just before they're dumped back into their old lives, the group learn there could be another opportunity in the near future if they change their minds. Sang-woo, the orchestrator for this coup, finds himself back in the same humdrum life from before. Text messages are relentless, reminding him he owes a lot of money, 6 billion won to be precise. Despite his struggles, he still helps out a fellow contestant in the games who shows up. This is Ali, who we'll speak about a bit more in a minute. Before that, Sang-woo happens to have an arrest warrant out for him, and unfortunately when his mother finds out, it completely crushes her. Ali, however, is being screwed over by his boss. The man refuses to give him the money he's owed, and it eventually leads to a skirmish between the pair. One thing leads to another, and Ali's boss has his hand crushed. When he drops a wad of cash, Ali scoops it up and runs. Back home he speaks to his wife, handing over the money, and telling her to pack up and leave. Meanwhile, Gai-han heads to the police, but his incredulous story draws concerns over his mental well-being. The number on the business card even connects through to a random woman who seems to be unconnected with the games. It seems these contestants are on their own. Gai-han is soon rushed to the hospital though, with his mother in a bad way. She's diabetic and could even have her feet amputated too. However, she knows they're struggling for money, and limps out the front door without being seen to. This tough cookie refuses to land Gai-han in even more debt and walks off. As she does, our protagonist promises to get her all the money she needs. As fate would have it, Gai-han runs into player 1 again. The pair share dried ramen and soju outside a shop, with the latter deciding he's going to re-enter the games after all. Meanwhile, Deok-soo, player 101 and the mob boss from the games, is actually just a middleman. There are bigger bosses after him, which sees the man decide to turn back toward the games as a way out. Only, he intends to be ready this time. With tens of billions of won, he wants to blindside Ho's in charge, stealing all the cash for himself. One officer who does believe Gai-han's story from the station is Junho. He has his own reasons for getting involved, stemming from his brother who also received a business card and is assumed to be missing. He wants Gai-han's help, but the man refuses to do so. However, Gai-han does receive a business card of his own when he shows up back home. As the episode comes to a close, all of our main characters prepare to be part of the games once more, willingly entering the cars and allowing themselves to be drugged. Only, Junho happens to be watching, and he tails them in his own car. Interestingly, 67 also comes prepared, only pretending to be knocked out from the game. Episode 3 of Squid Game begins with Junho following the cars down to Mujin Port. He watches as all these identical cars prepare to board a ferry to the island. Instead of calling for backup or taking pictures though, Junho messages the chief, telling him he'll be late, and stows away inside one of the cars. After knocking out a guard and stealing his outfit, Junho blends in with the others, dumping the body out at sea with his own ID. There are a lot of staff working on this island, and they silently work to strip down each candidate before placing them in the dormitory. They take their belongings and wait for the men and women to wake up. In fact, 187 people have decided to come back. Gai-han is among them of course, and immediately decides to form a faction with Sang-woo, Ali and Player 1. Speaking of factions, Deok-soo follows suit and begins to form a group of his own. With the contestants all fed, the staff return to their quarters. Only, it's pretty much a prison for them too, unable to remove their masks and being watched 24/7. And who are they being watched by? More staff. It seems there's a hierarchy among all these staff members, with different symbols on their masks to reinforce this. When the next game begins, 4 different doors sporting a symbol on stand before them. A triangle, circle, umbrella and star. Each shape is representing the game they're playing, which is called sugar honeycomb. It turns out those shapes are etched into a chunk of honeycomb, and each contestant needs to remove the shape without snapping or breaking it. If they do, they're shot dead. Sang-woo has an inkling over what this game is, thanks to overhearing 67's conversation the night before. Now, she snuck into the vents and noticed the staff cooking up something sweet that smelled like burnt sugar. While talking about it that night, Sang-woo caught the tail end of her conversation. Given the games being played, and some flashbacks from Sang-woo, he had an idea that sugar honeycomb could be the game being played. Anyway, he decides against telling Gai-han who chooses the hardest shape and umbrella. Sang-woo chooses the easiest, which is a triangle. As the 10-minute time limit start, Sang-woo, Ali and player 67 all pass pretty easily. One by one the players start to pass, but among those in attendance is a sneaky little player called 111. He has a distinct advantage over everyone else, given he has someone on the inside, helping to pass each game. He's been receives notes smuggled in food, with the first hidden inside a bread roll. With the time whittling away, and some players gaining a distinct advantage over others thanks to clues and the lighter, Guy Hun figures out that licking the shape can help to thin it out, and make it easier to cut the honeycomb. It's ingenious in truth, and one that sees many other players notice and follow suit. Guy Hun and Player 1 both pass right at the death. With the rest of the contestants killed, one man steps up and holds a staff member at gunpoint. Unwilling to kill the kid after forcing his mask off, he turns the gun on himself and fires. Only, the front man arrives and kills the unmasked staff member, a reminder that they cannot give away their identities to anyone. Just before Jun-ho helps with the cleanup duties, he grabs the boy's mask from the ground to blend in with the authority. Episode 4 Squid Game begins with player 111 being led away from the others to a hidden area. Accompanied by one of the staff members, he's taken down a back passage to a secret chamber. Another deletes the CCTV footage. Back in the dormitory, Guy Hun starts to suspect Sang-woo isn't being wholly truthful about the whole honeycomb gig, although he keeps his concerns to himself for now. More pressing than that though is Deok-soo, who decides to break the rules, and ends up eating a second helping of their lowly egg and water meal. That leaves 5 contestants to go hungry. And the staff. They just stand silently and watch as Deok-soo beats the man to death. The only thing that changes is the chip-tune chime, as this deceased player is removed and more money is added to the prize fund. Now, these bodies are taken down to the infirmary where Jun-ho happens to be located. He takes the square mask for himself, which basically makes him his supervisor now. 111 definitely has inside knowledge and continues to work with the cleanup crew for a shadowy mission of their own. Through his informants inside, 111 learns that the reduced rations were all part of the game, intending to turn the players on each other and weed out the weaklings. Inside 111's egg is another message, although he gobbles it down before we can see what's on it. The gist of it though stems from the next game, which 111 is given brief hints about. He's told to stick with the strongest team, and that falls to Deok-soo's gang. As one may expect, 111 teams up with Deok-soo, and even tells him what the next game will be to sweeten the deal. During Lights Out, all hell breaks loose. The tension built up early on spills into Deok-soo and his gang going after the other contestants with broken glass and knives. The lights flicker relentlessly as the others try to survive their onslaught. Guy Hun goes straight after player 1, hoping the old man is okay. He's not in his bed though, and as the group scramble to find him. Will they do, bodies begin to mosaic the floor. Player 67 joins Guy Hun's group, while a standoff eventually leads to player 1 standing atop the beds and pleading with them all to stop, given he's scared. The front man watches all of this take place, and eventually calls on the guards to rush in and end this. Given they're all waiting by the door, it seems like the staff knew this would transpire in this way. In the aftermath of this, we finally get to learn who everyone is. Player 67 is actually called Sae-byok, while player 1 is clearly shook up and suffering from dementia. He can't remember his own name. Meanwhile, Jun-ho realizes that the man coughing next door to him is actually coughing in Morse code. Jun-ho writes down the dashes and dots, and seems to interpret it as number 29, which is the exact room he's occupying. He doesn't get long to try and decipher this further, given the third game is about to begin. This is a team game, with contestants dividing themselves up into groups of 10. They have a 10-minute time limit and 111 well aware of what the next game is already urges Deok-soo to bring more men into the group. Guy Hun adopts the same tactic, pushing player 212, whose real name is Hanmi Nyo, away after hooking up with her in private. Well, she winds up joining Guy Hun's group in the end, much to 111's despair. With the time up, our different groups enter another room where they learn that their big task is actually tug of war. Of course, this reinforces why Sang-woo wanted to bring more men into the group, given the need for upper body strength. Teams are divided up into 2 different towers, suspended high above the floor. Those who fall do so to their doom. Unfortunately, Team 4 are drawn with Team 5, which is made up entirely of men. Ominous music picks up as our 2 different groups take their place on the suspended platforms. As fate would have it, player 1 is actually very good at this, dishing out some sound advice over the best way to play. It's incredibly tense, and as Sang-woo takes charge, telling them to move forward 3 spaces, the episode comes to an agonizing. Episode 5 A Squid Game wastes absolutely no time picking up right where we left off from before. Team 4 step forward, catching the group off balance and leaving Guy Han dangling precariously off the edge. The move works and Team 5 find themselves slipping. Team 4 come out as victors. While the dysfunctional group head back to their dormitory, the workers continue to deceive the front man and the others in charge. After marking one of the caskets with a bloody cross last time out, the body is dropped before hitting the incinerator. This drops to a secret chamber where the body is seen 2 by 2 defected workers, numbers 28 and 29. Now, given Junho has taken over number 29's room, he's thrust into this role. Back in the dorm, Guy Hun's group set up a barricade, not willing to take any chances given the attack before. They're not going to see another massacre, and Guy Hun even has some choice words for Deoksu too. He warns him against getting complacent, pointing out that the thugs he's with aren't exactly trustworthy. As they say, there's no honor among thieves. Now, player 111, our doctor, has a deal with the corrupt workers in the games. With the CCTV footage deleted, he's being used to help the corrupt workers ferry organs out of these dead bodies and onto a boat bound for the mainland. In exchange, the doctor is told what the next games will be and given a distinct advantage. It's a win-win situation if they can remain undetected, that is. The organs are bagged and handed over to staff members number 28 and number 29. Now, 29 is actually Junho in disguise, of course, and he does a relatively good job blending in. In their absence, 111 starts to lose his trust in the remaining guards, especially when they refuse to disclose details about the next game. He charges out the room and makes his way through the winding hallways to the familiar playground, ascending through numerous doors, and clearly being spotted on a whole number of different cameras. Up above ground, the front man arrives and shoots the unmasked worker dead as 111 watches on in shock. The arrangement has come to an abrupt end, and it spells bad news for 111 too. The doctor is shot dead too, reminded that these games are supposed to be fair. Meanwhile, down in the basement, Junho's identity is revealed to staff member 28. Junho believes these men are responsible for what happened to his brother, but 28 remains adamant that they're not. However, he does reveal the location of a list with all the different people operated on, including a girl whom he and his buddies each took turns raping before taking her organs. Disgusted, Junho shoots the man in the head. It doesn't take long for the front man to realize Junho is not one of them, and alarm bells wail overhead as a search gets underway. With precious little time remaining, Junho sneaks into the record room and digs through the files. Labeled as Squid archives, he begins sifting through each player's files, and finds their medical records and details about their life. Hiding inside one of the drawers is a familiar black box with pink ribbon. This holds a list of all the winners, dating back all the way to 1990. Anyway, one player immediately catches his attention, player 132, Huang In-ho. Checking the 2015 file, he realizes that this rings true, and his brother was very much a part of these games. Episode 6 of Squid Game begins with the next game beginning, despite Junho still on the prowl. Guy Han helps out player 1, wrapping a hooded jumper across his midriff to hide his wet patches. The poor man is clearly frightened, but thus far has done a pretty good job hiding it. However, that fear comes back in big waves, as the doctor and the corrupt guards are shown hung in the stairwell for the remaining players to see. This is a warning that those trying to gain an unfair advantage will be punished, and boy do the players get the message. Meanwhile, Junho snaps photos of all the evidence in the archives. A phone call brings the front man back and Junho into hiding, as he speaks English to whoever it is on the other line. They confirm that the next game will begin as scheduled. Taking a deep breath, he prepares to oversee what's to come next. Well, the next game sees players split into pairs. Whenever 2 players agree to team up, they must shake hands to seal the deal. Minayo is a wild card here, with Sang-woo and Guy Han both reluctant to take her on. In fact, everyone is in by the end of this 10-minute time limit. She's left kicking and screaming as guards take her away. Sang-woo and Ali decide to team together, leaving Guy Han to team up with player 1 instead. As they make their way to the designated area, each team are given bags with 10 marbles inside. The winner of this round is the player who manages to take all the marbles from the other. They have 30 minutes to do this, but that's easier said than done. Everyone has teamed up with people they trust, so this exercise is incredibly painful for all involved. While everyone gets to work playing a series of different games, player 001 refuses to indulge in this, and decides he's going to try and find his house instead, given this area is designed to look exactly like his old neighborhood. He wants to find his old house. Guy Han pleads with him to play, shouting at the elderly man, and holding him tightly. Eventually they agree to play odd and even, although player 001 is pretty nonchalant about the whole affair. Deok-soo's minion almost beats his boss, turning and antagonizing him right at the cusp of victory. Thanks to the staff though, Deok-soo is allowed to choose a different game which saves him. At the same time, Se-byok opens up about more of her past to Jae-young, the player with a nose stud, including how she ran away from North Korea. She wants the prize money so she can bring her whole family together and head across to Jeju Island. Eventually the pair play, with the winner decided by who throws the marble closest to the wall. Jae-young though sacrifices herself for Se-byok, in a beautiful gesture as she admits she has nothing else to live for. Meanwhile, Sang-woo and Ali play and eventually decide to team up and go after other teams. Sang-woo encourages Ali to hand over his marbles, switching it for a whole bag of rocks. He double-crosses the poor man and leaves him with nothing but a bullet to the brain. As the time runs out, gunshots echo across the area. Gae-han loses his patience with the old man, leading to the pair talking outside Player 1's old house. Or at least a mock-up of it anyway. Player 1 decides to give up in the end, with the pair hugging as a final gesture. Just before he goes, Player 1 confirms his name is Ilnam. Gae-han walks away with all the marbles, tears rolling down his cheeks, as the gunshot that sounds as he walks out breaking a million hearts watching this. Episode 7 of Squid Game begins right off the back of that devastating end to the previous episode. The cleanup crew begin taking out the deceased as the front man learns the intruder, Jun-ho, is still on the loose. Well, there's more pressing matters to deal with given VIP investors are en route to the facility. As the survivors trudge back to the dormitories they learn that Minayo has survived too. She was simply taken back to the dorm to wait for the next round. Going into the 5th round, though there's 17 players left, for a grand total of 43.9 billion won. The front man senses that the intruder is in his office, figuring out that the phone receiver was put back the wrong way around. Now, Jun-ho happens to be waiting in the basement, but thankfully the front man receives a message from his subordinates before he can find the officer. A body has been found on the northern shore of the island. It's the dead body of the staff member from before, but Jun-ho's police ID seems to be enough to convince the front man that he's the intruder. The VIP guests arrive, complete with masks, and are invited into the building. The host has urgent business to attend to, so it falls to the front man to greet them. They're clearly here to make some sort of investment, but before that, want to see how the games operate, and to bet on them. Jun-ho happens to be in the vents, and he listens to all of this transpire. Given everyone here wears a mask, it makes Jun-ho's job easier to skip around and pose as different workers. And that's exactly what he does, when he takes the mask and outfit for one of the VIP caters. Player 69 hangs himself just before the start of the 5th game, following the death of his partner in the previous round. This evens everything up going into this next challenge. The VIP guests get settled in while the remaining players prepare for the penultimate game. First up, each player is told to choose a mannequin and put on the corresponding vest they're wearing. Now, these numbers actually correspond to the order these guys will be playing. Player 96 decides to go first, leaving Gae-han to reluctantly pick vest 16, meaning he will go last. With the order decided, now it falls to the actual game itself. This game is called Glass Stepping Stones. There's tempered glass and normal glass, with each player told to hop forward to figure out which is the right one. As one may expect, normal glass will just break under the weight of one person, while tempered will hold you up. Basically this is one big leap of faith. There's a 15-minute time limit as well, and that goes for all of the players to cross in that time period. It doesn't take long for 96 to fall to his doom. The others soon step across the glass, taking it in turns to jump from left to right. With time running out, each player begins to grow impatient, pushing the one in front. The religious player starts this trend, and soon it follows all the way down the line. Well, that is, until Deok-soo ends up at the front. He refuses to take a step forward, demanding the others behind him go ahead. Well, that is until he comes face to face with none other than Minayo. She sacrifices herself, taking Deok-soo with her as the pair fall to their doom below. Inside the VIP room, Jun-ho is put in an uncompromising position with the VIP guest. He wants Jun-ho to unmask, but he refuses to do so, knowing he'll die if he does. Instead, Jun-ho encourages the sleazy old man to take him somewhere private. With the man stripped down, Jun-ho holds a gun up to him and starts recording, demanding to know everything about the games. The front man assumes something is up though, given their lengthy departure, and sends help after them to figure out where they are. Player 13 figures out the difference between the glass and seems to have known since the very beginning. In fact, he once had a job as a glass manufacturer, which the different VIP guests soon learn of. Anyway, he stayed quiet before, because with guys like Deoxys part of the game, he didn't want these killers getting ahead. The front man and the VIPs figure out this advantage, and with only one panel left, shut all the lights off. It's going to come down to a leap of faith. Or, more specifically, Sang-woo showing his true colors and pushing the man forward to his doom. Thankfully, Sae-Byeok and Gai-hun all make it to safety. And just in time, as shards of glass fly through the air like confetti. With the game over, the VIPs delighted, and Junho on the move, the final scene of the episode, sees Junho out away from the island, deep in the water. Unfortunately, the front man and his goons are in hot pursuit, and aboard a boat. Will he manage to evade them? Episode 8 of Squid Game begins with our three finalists making their way downstairs, a trail of blood following in their wake. While they make their way back to the dormitory, Junho manages to make it back to the island. His phone, kept in a watertight bag, is with him, and seems to hold all the evidence to what's going on here, especially if the dead VIP guest and the video logs are anything to go by. Junho hurries back to the main facility, away from the front man, who continues to hunt him. Junho realizes he's in trouble, though, and phones the chief, telling him to track his signal and arrive at the island with a whole squad of people. Unfortunately, Junho runs into trouble when the front man and his goons corner him by the cliff edge. With one bullet left, things don't look good. Back inside the games, Sang-woo and Gai-hun come to blows. Things are incredibly tense between them, until one of the guards arrives with a special gift for the three finalists. This happens to be an outfit for the trio, plus a lavish meal. The final supper perhaps. It certainly feels that way, as the trio are sat at a triangular table facing one another. After their main meal, each of them silently take a knife, while their plates are cleared away. Sae-Byeok has barely been eating, and that night, Gai-hun decides to sit alongside her in the dorms, promising to beat Sang-woo and split the money fairly with her. When Sang-woo falls asleep, Gai-hun thinks about killing his old friend, but decides against it, leaving their fate for the arena. However, Sae-Byeok has been injured badly. She's bleeding profusely from the stomach and so far, has been hiding it all this time. Now though, she's fading fast. By the time Gai-hun stands up to try and get her help from the guards, Sang-woo has moved and killed the girl, quick as a flash. The guards eventually arrive with a casket to take her away as Gai-hun finds himself enraged and out for blood. Back on the cliff edge, Junho learns the identity of the front man. It turns out it's his own brother, In-ho. He's been working here the whole time, and it explains why he's been missing from the mainland. Has he been brainwashed? Before we find out, he brandishes a gun of his own and shoots his brother. In-ho is clearly affected by this though, and struggles to control his emotions as he looks in the mirror later on that day. As Fly Me to the Moon picks up again, Sae-Byeok's body is put in the incinerator, leaving this finale down to two men. As has become obvious, especially throughout the last couple of episodes, the outcome of the Squid Game was always going to be decided by a showdown between Gai-hun and Sang-woo. Calling back to the first episode, during which a narrator outlined the rules of the playground version of the Squid Game, the sixth trial is, really, just a fight between these two men. There are punches, knives, eager spectators, stabbing, and biting. It's a brutal battle between offense and defense, and at this point good and evil. The show's morality hasn't exactly been complex. The VIPs don't complicate matters. If anything, their exclusive tastes for violence against the downtrodden only simplifies things. Squid Game Season 1, Episode 9 Recap. Gai-hun is able to win the Squid Game with his morality intact. Despite having the opportunity to kill his former friend, he doesn't take it. In fact, he even tries to sacrifice the prize money by enacting the third clause of the contract, which would cease the games and save both finalists. But Sang-woo, having already lost the best parts of himself, is having none of that. He stabs himself in the neck, instructing Gai-hun to take care of his mother before expiring. Now a winner, and a very rich man, Gai-hun is taken back to the mainland by the front man. Tragically, though, when Gai-hun returns home, he finds his mother dead. 12 months later, and despite not having spent any of his prize money, Gai-hun is obviously a changed man. The events of the games are clearly not far behind him, though, especially not when Gai-hun buys a rose, attached to which is a note instructing him to visit the 77th floor of the Sky Building on December 24th, signed by your Ganbu. Cue obligatory finale twist. The twist is both good and bad news. The good is that dear old Il-nam is still alive. The bad is that this is because he's the enigmatic host, and has been orchestrating these games since their genesis. Perhaps most cruelly of all, they were invented as something of a lark, just a way for rich people to spend their money, betting on human beings as they would horses or track dogs in an odd way. This is a callback to Guy Hunt's gambling habits at the start of the season. Is he really that different from Milnam? Is betting on actual human beings just the next logical step when it comes to those who already have everything, trying to find a way to pass their idle time? It's a bit of a blow for the show to reframe the character of Vilnam in this way. He was so sweet all throughout that it's crushing to finally find yourself wishing that his brain tumor, which turns out to be real, and the primary motivator behind his actual inclusion in the games this year, to kill him off sooner rather than later. Luckily, viewers thinking along those lines get what they want, since Il-Nam promptly passes away. With this twist having been revealed, lots of details we have witnessed throughout the season, such as the frontman's sudden takeover of the games, begin to make more sense, which is always the sign of a good twist. But it's a twist that also radically alters Guy-hun, who realizes, after a makeover, that he simply cannot let this stand. He honors his promise to save Iok by taking her brother to Sang-woo's mother, and setting them both up for life, financially speaking. He interrupts the salesman trying to recruit more people for the games. And he promises the front man that he'll make him pay for everything he has done. A second season, anyway. So Squid Game bows out with an open ending, one that gives some crucial answers to some of the big questions, but leaves things on a tantalizing cliffhanger too. Will this be renewed for season 2? Much like Alice in Borderland, this show has a lot more to give, and the idea of extra games, more insight into the other VIPs, and taking down the hierarchy, is something that promises lots of maneuvering if this is renewed. In terms of final twists though, the revelation that Il-Nam is still alive and actually one of the key players behind everything that's happened, is a real hammer blow to the gut. It's definitely an unexpected turn of events, and one that does show that there's some good left in humanity, especially given the way Guy-hun helped the old man out in the games. Il-Nam's insider knowledge also explains away a lot of his hints and tips, along with knowledge behind different parts of the games as well. It's a small inclusion, but one that feels pretty consistent with the show's narrative as a whole. The Junho angle is another nice touch, although by the end there's lots of big question marks around how the front man feels about killing his brother, and how he's affected by this. That's to say nothing about how he's able to slip back and forth between the island and Il-Nam without arousing suspicions, especially given he's supposed to be missing. Despite that though, Squid Game bows out with a decent enough finale to this unusual and utterly engrossing show. Roll on Season 2.